What up, though, my yarn and tea crew, and welcome back to my channel. Here we mix the cozy world of crochet with the thrill of true crime. So whether you here to learn from me, a stitch, a pattern, or you want to hear some tea and a tale, you know I got you covered. Like, comment, and subscribe so you never have to miss a beat. So today, y'all, we diving right back into Detroit, Michigan, and this is the case of Benjamin Atkins. And this one was wild, and it just really makes you think about your upbringing and how mental health can shape who we become ultimately. Now, August 26, 1968, Benjamin Thomas Atkins was born, but he was known by Tony. He would be the youngest of two brothers, and both of his parents was drug addicts and alcoholics, so he was just born into a life of hardship and challenges. A short amount of time would pass, and his father would lead a family, and he would leave the mother to figure things out on her own. Now, the problem was Mama already had a career. She was in the business of making friends every 30 minutes to an hour, if you catch what I mean. So she eventually abandoned Benjamin, and he would wind up in an orphanage where he spent a couple of years. Apparently, during this time, he was physically assaulted by some of the other boys there and was sexually assaulted, and also by his caseworker. So after years of abuse, Benjamin would run away and start back living with his mother. Now, Mama just had no clue whatsoever. She would perform acts in the car while Benjamin and his older brother was in the back seat, and they were forced to go to work with her. Like, can you imagine that as a kid? The trauma that came with that, running from what you was experiencing, and now you watching your parent perform. So Benjamin couldn't take it, and he ran away. He went to live in the streets, and he said he would rather fend for himself than to sit here and have to watch his mother over and over. He had no education, he had no job, so he was forced to work in very, very low skilled labor jobs for low wages, and he spent a lot of nights in shelters. Eventually, being on the streets will lead him to being caught up in the crack cocaine epidemic, and the abuse of the crack cocaine and the alcohol will heighten Benjamin's anger towards his mother. The system that failed to protect him, and that anger would cast a storm that will last over a 9-month period between December of 91 and August of 1992. In October of 91, Benjamin decided he was going to befriend a sex worker named Darlene Saunders, and they both liked to partake in the same substances. They was on the same wave, and they partied together. So one day, Darlene would meet Benjamin alone in one of the abandoned buildings that he would be in, and they were vibing at first, having a good time. And the higher that flight went that they was on, the more Darlene started to look like his mother. So he flipped out and he attacked her, and it went from chill to chaotic in a matter of seconds. So Benjamin chokes her, he took off her clothes, and he assaulted her. And she is able to get away after this, and she flees to the police station to go make a police report. Now, he is not pursued because Darlene is a prostitute, and they decided not to take her case serious. And during this time, Benjamin got paranoid that she got away. He knew that it was just a matter of time that he was going to get caught. So he decided to lay low for a while. But even with laying low, he couldn't stop thinking about how satisfying it was to choke Darlene and to let out some of his anger and frustration and that rage of letting out everything that he had felt towards his mother. So in December of 91, the same year, he decided to lure Debbie Ann Friday into yet another abandoned building. But he had intentions, and they definitely weren't friendly. And days later, on December 14th, Debbie Ann Friday, who was 30, body would be found in the building in Highland Park. She was completely undressed, and there was no evidence, no leads, because she was a prostitute. Her investigation was not prioritized. 16 days later, on December 30th, 1991, the body of Bertha Jean Mason, who was 26, was found. And just 3 days later, on January 3rd, 1992, 36-year-old Patricia Cannon George would be found while they were trying to demolish an older building. On January 25th, 1992, later that same month, Vicky Truelove would be discovered in an abandoned building as well. So as the bodies started to pile up, the Detroit police noticed a disturbing pattern. Each of the victims shared similar characteristics and the same brutal method for killing. So this led them to suspect that it had to be a single individual who was responsible for these heinous crimes. Now, a task force from Highland Park, Detroit, the Michigan State Police, and the FBI was assembled. Baby, they was not playing with Mr. Benjamin, you hear me? And they better than me because I would have called all six of the armed forces for help. Now, remember in the very beginning of this story, I told y'all about a lady named Darlene Saunders, but she was the victim who got away. So she came forward giving the police a detailed description of Atkins, trying to tell them, listen, I came in and made a report. I tried to tell y'all this has to be the same person. So with the description, it helped them identify and locate him. And what's crazy is when the police started the investigation and started bringing everybody in, their daddies, their uncles, their nephews, he was actually one of the men brought in, but he had no record. And because there was no evidence, they had no reason to suspect him and they let him go. When Benjamin was brought in the second time, August 1st of 1992, they asked him about the night with Darlene. And they started questioning him about all of these women that were turning up in all of these abandoned buildings. So he denied all of the accusations and he claimed that he was homosexual. He had no interest in women. This couldn't possibly be him. Now, the crazy part is that was actually a fact. He did date men, but he also did a little bit more than that. So during the interrogation, Detroit homicide detective Sergeant Ronald Sanders was watching, and he was scheduled to leave and go on vacation in an hour. And he was like, you know what? Let me get a shot at Benjamin Atkins. So he sat down and said, look, you never had a father, and I have a son exactly your age. You need to go ahead and get this off your chest and talk to me. And guess what? Baby, he spilled all of the tea. He worked his way through 5 cheeseburgers and confessed to all of the murders, including one victim that he hid under a secret basement beneath a vacant garage, bringing the total to 11 women. 11. Y'all, the trial will last for 4 months and 3 days of deliberation. During the trial, one of the jurors watched Benjamin quietly rocking in his chair, and she thought about his brutal childhood. She thought about how he'd been abandoned, raped, and she wanted to find him guilty but mentally ill, hoping that he would be hospitalized and in prison. But she changed her mind. She said murder and rape are violent acts and not craziness. 2 juries found Benjamin guilty of a string of heinous stranglings and rape in Detroit and Highland Park. He was 25 at the time and showed no reaction. He was really just concerned about getting a cigarette, according to the deputy. He was sentenced to 11 life terms, and he only served 4 years after a crazy tragic twist. He died at 29 years old at the Wayne Waters Hospital, which is connected with the Eagler Correctional Facility in Jackson, and his cause of death was listed as an HIV infection. Atkins amassed the greatest number of victims in such a short period of time in the United States, according to the FBI investigators. Now, if you anything like me, you had to have wondered, was there an auntie, a grandma, a cousin, somebody that could have came and saved the day for these babies? I'm thinking about the beginning of this case when they said the caseworker is one of the people who sexually assaulted Benjamin. So you got the mother, the caseworker, he not safe in the orphanage. Like, this poor baby literally never, ever stood a chance. He never received love. He never knew what love was. And that was just so sad. There was no public information about friends or relatives that even knew Benjamin. In fact, all they did was discuss his background just to provide context for his character. But there was no specific testimonies from anyone, and there was none featured in any of the media coverage. After looking at this case, I just think it's clear that the actions of Benjamin Atkins were extremely troubling, and there are many factors to consider. So, what are your thoughts on this case? Like, do you think his actions was influenced by his childhood experiences? Do you believe that he was guilty by insanity, or do you think he was aware of what he was doing? As of 2023, the Highland Park Police work with identifiers to use forensic genetic genealogy to identify the remaining unknown victim. This was definitely a crazy story, y'all. It kept me on the edge of my seat. And if you like me and was born in the 90s, you might not have knew about this one because I for sure didn't. If you got any ideas on cases for me, please drop them in the comments. And I'm going to do my best to get to them because I do not just cover Detroit, but we going to start this off and pay homage to my city, okay? All right, my yarn and tea crew, that is all I have for you today. And that wraps up today's chilling case. So if you found this story compelling and you want to hear more from me, just don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Ring that notification bell so that you never miss an update from me. And remember, this is for the yarn lovers and the tea sippers. So stay cozy, stay curious, and I'm going to see you in the next video.